you looking for melee league starters? And more specifically, are you looking for slam melee league starters? Well, look no further, because I present to you a Juggernaut, yes, you heard that right, Juggernaut full fire conversion EARTHSHATTER build. There are quite a few moving parts here. I think I cooked. I hope I cooked. So let me explain to you real quick. Let's actually get started with the items here, just so you make sure this is like a completely ethical config. We're using just a 650 DPS-ish weapon. This should be pretty easy to obtain, given the new quality being multiplicative on weapons. Just life resistances, Eldritch implicit here for the leech. That'll be super easy to get, super common. And then the fizz converted to fire. That's really easy to get as well. You can get those gloves all the time in your betrayal league mechanic. Life resistances, a little bit of movement speed on the boots. This amulet might be a little bit unethical with the vigor anointment there. You can just get a couple opalescent oils, buy them. They should be pretty cheap early on. You can just run blight yourself, God forbid. But pretty ethical. Life resistances, a little bit of wed. Flasks are not activated. And then jewels are literally 2-stat jewels. The cluster jewels, I'm running only 1 passive here, and then the other only running 2 passives. So everything all in all is just super low budget, super ethical for a league starter. And now let's look at the configuration tab, because there are a whole bunch of changes that PoB has not officially started updating yet. Number 1, the auto exertion gem. This is the new call to arms support. 20% quality gives you cooldown recovery rate on top of the gem no longer giving you reduced cooldown recovery rate. It gives you increased cooldown recovery rate, which is good. You want that. So all in all, it should be 40% should be accurate with a level 20% auto exertion. By the way, that's the only quality gem here. None of my other gems have quality whatsoever. So that's the only gem for the quality, and I'm just using it for the cooldown of the war cries. EARTHSHATTER got massive buffs, 96% more damage. My math should be right on that one. The new weapon enchant system. This is maybe a little high rolled. Probably actually bump this down to like, 40-ish, right in the middle. I think it rolls from 30 to 50. It may be kind of expensive as well, but roughly there. Also looking at the DPS, this is just for the spikes. So EARTHSHATTER, if you don't know, when you slam the ground, it shoots out, I think, 5 spikes by default. And the more area you have, the farther apart those spikes get. So I configured it with 2 spikes here. And remember, you are still hitting the boss with your initial impact. So we're looking at like 800k DPS with the initial impact, plus about 1.1 mil. So we're looking at about 2 million-ish DPS on this ethical config, as I'll explain the rest here. So consider that when we're talking about this, about 2 million DPS with the current config. So the weapon enchant is from the new mechanic. This should hopefully sound like super expensive to get. I don't think it will be. Tinctures are back, and one of them is elemental damage. We'll just be using that one, so I just have 100% elemental damage there. There's probably going to be a bunch of other modifiers on it, so that's actually probably low-rolled, if anything. The overexertion support, this thing is probably low-rolled. So the thing about overexertion, I'll put up a little picture here too, is it has 2 lines for the damage. It has one line that says, I think it's level 1 gem, 12% more damage per warcry exerting the attack. So if you have 3 warcries, which we do in this build, that would be 36% more damage. And then the 10%, it just says if the attack is exerted by at least 1 warcry, then you get 10% more damage. I don't know if those 2 more multipliers are separate, or if they're just added together. It's just labeled separately for skill gem, clarification purposes. If they are separate, you actually get a little more damage out of it. So I think 55% for a level 20 overexertion is fairly conservative, because that would assume it only goes up to like, what, 15%? Yeah, I would assume it only goes up to 15% from 12% per warcry. Again, I'll have the picture. That'll be easy to follow. And I highly doubt that's all it goes to. So I think overexertion, again, this is probably low roll for the overall damage it gives you. Next, the endurance charge changes. If you don't know, they changed endurance charges to no longer grant 4% to all elemental resistances per charge. Now it gives you 4% reduced elemental damage taken per endurance charge. So this is considering 7 total endurance charges. You get 3 from the passive tree, and you have to anoint one of them down here, which again, vigor is double opalescent and a crimson. Those should be pretty cheap to get, especially the crimson's like nothing. The double opalescent hopefully won't be that expensive early on. And then you get 1 from a marauder. And then you get 3 just by default. So you have 7 total endurance charges for 35% reduced elemental damage taken. Next up, they buffed the life and armor values on gear, or rather, they added new base types, so you're getting a way higher base armor. So with those factors in mind, I believe like 175-ish life, 4,000-ish armor. Those might be low roll. Those might be a little high. It's probably somewhat accurate. That's just tossing that in there instead of configuring like some random gear. So there you go for the custom modifiers. It should be fairly accurate, if not a little low on things, like I said. Also, this does not include things such as Infernal Cry. The combustion mechanic of Infernal Cry was buffed from 158% damage to, I think it's like maybe like 225 actually. But anyway, it's more damage, so you're going to have more damage elsewhere here. So how this build works is it's just an EARTHSHATTER slam build. It really is that simple. If you did not know, the new Call to Arms support is now going to be called Auto Exertion, and Call to Arms before that, and now Auto Exertion in the new patch, just automates your war cry. cries. And auto exertion is significantly better than call to arms in my opinion, because it allows your war cries to trigger independently. They no longer share the same cooldown, which is absolutely gargantuan for slam builds like this. It is massive quality of life. If you've seen other people play slam builds and you see them manually having to cast their slams, you no longer have to do that with the new auto exertion, which is absolutely fantastic and why I want to play this build. So the name of the game is just to make sure your attack rate is lining up with the cooldown recovery of your war cry. So if we go here to war cries, we look at the cooldown of like Infernal Cry, they all have the same base cooldown of 8 seconds. So with this current config, we have a 3.7-ish second cooldown, and maybe we don't even need these nodes. I'll have to experiment once I start actually playing the build, but I figured that should be close enough with of a cooldown with the attack rate of my weapon, such that every time I attack, it's always going to be exerted by all 3 of my war cries, which is very important because they give a lot of damage, a lot of benefits. Other than that, this is, I would say, a fairly standard Juggernaut tree. They added a new all max res here, or all max elemental res here, so I'd recommend taking that stuff because we're already in this area anyway. We have the new rage nodes. You're probably going to reach max rage with this because I believe the rage only degens after 2 seconds. So you should be hitting things more than every 2 seconds because it's not just the initial hit, it's the spikes blowing up, and anything else you're doing is going to count as a hit. So as long as you're in combat, you should be getting up to max rage, so you'll probably be hitting this. And I only had this because it costs 3 points to get the mastery, which is intimidation, which is 10% more damage essentially. So that's very nice. And there's really nothing else special going on with the passive tree here. We have these new nodes here that give you 12% mana reservation. You probably won't even need these because the new auto exertion support for the war cries does reserve mana per war cry. So you actually are running 0 auras in this build, which is a absolutely wild thing if you told players last league that people are going to start running 0 auras in their build. So we have 3 war cries at 15% each, with 2 heralds at 25%, so 50 total, with a little bit of reservation for some wiggle room, because the tinctures, if you did not know, also inflict mana burn as they're activated. They're not just a free activation anymore like they were in Affliction League, so you're going to be losing a little bit of mana here. So I gave myself a little wiggle room by taking the 12% increase in mana reservation efficiency. And then for actually playing the build, it's very simple. Your primary war cries, which are exerting your Earthshatter, are automated now, so you don't have to think about them, they just go. Enduring Cry, you will manually activate whenever you need your endurance charges. If you're not in combat taking damage, like when you first start on a map, you might just pop Enduring Cry, get all your endurance charges, bada bing, bada boom, because otherwise your Juggernaut node here will always be generating endurance charges for you, so long as you're taking damage or getting hit, which you will. Leap Slam, you don't really need these links on it. I just have Combustion here just because if you do land and ignite from the Leap Slam, it will reduce the fire res of the enemy, give you a little more damage. You definitely don't need this. And then lastly, you have to manually cast your flammability just to lower the fire res a little more on the unique enemies that you're fighting. And that's about it for the build, ladies and gentlemen. Keep in mind that I have a notes tab here with obviously some notes that you might need for leveling, upgrade order once you finish the campaign and get into maps, general notes for the build, and then especially here in the item sets, I have low, medium, and high investments here. And if you just want to look at DPS for that, these are not like 100% accurate. These items are just kind of like pointing you in the right direction, but we're already going up quite a bit of DPS for medium and then quite a bit more for high investment. So keep all that stuff in mind. Also, this number is not even accurate because it doesn't even take into account the actual more damage multiplier of Echoes of Creation. So the damage of this skill I think is going to be absolutely insane given the buffs, and the automation of war cries is going to make the quality of life playing the play style of the build just through the roof. I think this is going to be excellent. You do not need to go Berserker for the damage and the Warcry exerting extra attacks. I think Juggernaut is absolutely busted in its current state. That being said, I'm sure this build could receive some changes, so let me know if you have any ideas on how to improve this passive tree. I haven't actually played slams in quite a while, so please, if you do have any tips, let me know and I can slide them into the POB here before it releases for the actual league. Other than that, you can stop by my stream at twitch.tv/WoolieGaming if you have any questions. I might make a couple more League Starter videos here and there. Otherwise, expect a whole bunch of content from me when the league actually goes live. Thanks for watching.